It was my brother's housewarming party, a brand new apartment, shining furniture, and guests filling every corner. He walked around proudly, showing everyone his two-bedroom place as if he had conquered the world. And then, with a smirk, he looked at me and said, "Not everyone can afford a two-bedroom apartment." The room burst into laughter. Even my parents smiled as if it was just a harmless joke. But for me, those words cut deep. They opened an old wound I thought I had buried long ago, the feeling of being invisible in my own family. Since childhood, my brother had always been the star. Every achievement of his was celebrated like a festival. And me? No matter how hard I worked, I was always the second one, the background character in my own home. That night, his words echoed louder than the clinking glasses and the chatter around me. My parents' proud faces made me wonder if they thought the same, that I had failed, that I hadn't made anything of myself. But what they didn't know was that my life wasn't empty. I had my own achievements, my own quiet success. I just never felt the need to put it on display. Growing up, our house always revolved around my brother. He was the golden child, top grades, trophies on every shelf, the one relatives boasted about at family gatherings. My parents never missed a chance to brag about him. His achievements were celebrated with cake and parties. Mine, they were acknowledged, with a half smile and a distracted "good job." I still remember the day I brought home a certificate from college, the result of months of hard work. My mother glanced at it, nodded, and then rushed off to iron my brother's shirt for a debate competition. Moments like that built a quiet wall inside me, brick by brick, teaching me to keep my victories to myself. As years passed, the difference between us only grew. My brother loved the spotlight, expensive clothes, loud parties, big declarations of success. I was different. I preferred working in silence, building my career step by step. I didn't post every milestone online. I didn't measure worth by how many people clapped for me. But to my parents, silence looked like failure. To them, my modest apartment was a sign that I was still behind. And to my brother, it was an easy target for jokes. So when I walked into his housewarming party that evening, I already knew what to expect. The place was crowded with guests, admiring his polished kitchen and stylish furniture. My parents beamed as they introduced him proudly, their voices full of pride. I stayed in the background, sipping a drink, quietly observing, and then came his comment, the one that made everyone laugh at my expense. "Not everyone can afford a two-bedroom apartment," he said, grinning like he had won some unspoken game. I smiled faintly, but inside, something shifted. For years, I had let remarks like that pass. But that night, I felt a fire burning in my chest. For the first time, I wondered if it was time to stop hiding. The party carried on, the sound of clinking glasses mixing with bursts of laughter. My brother was in his element, guiding guests through every corner of his new apartment like a proud king showing off his castle. "This marble countertop? Imported," he boasted, running his hand over the kitchen island. "Cost me a fortune, but hey, that's what success looks like." Guests nodded and praised him, while my parents stood nearby, their smiles stretched wide with pride. I lingered near the back, trying to blend in with the crowd. It wasn't jealousy, I had long outgrown that, but the constant comparisons, the subtle digs, they never seemed to stop. At one point, a relative asked me casually, "So, when will we be celebrating your housewarming?" Before I could answer, my brother chimed in with a laugh. "Don't rush her. She's still adjusting to her cozy little place." The room chuckled again. My cheeks grew hot, but I forced a polite smile. Inside, though, the fire burned brighter. As the evening went on, he found little ways to remind everyone of his superiority. He spoke loudly about his promotion, his salary, his strategic choices. He even joked, "I guess not everyone has the mindset to think big." His words weren't aimed at the guests. They were meant for me. I caught my aunt watching me, quietly from across the room. Her eyes were kind, almost apologetic, as if she wanted to say, "They don't know the full story, do they?" She, perhaps, was one of the few who had seen glimpses of my real life. The long nights I spent working, the quiet but steady progress I made, the dreams I nurtured without putting them on display. For most of my life, I had kept my success private. I never felt the need to prove myself to anyone. But standing there with laughter echoing around me and my brother's smirk burning in my memory, I felt something shift. Maybe it was time. Maybe silence had served its purpose. And now, it was becoming a cage. That night, as I held my glass tighter, I made a quiet decision. I would no longer let myself be mocked into invisibility. The night grew louder as more guests arrived. Music played softly in the background, but it was my brother's voice that dominated the room. Every story he told ended with him at the center, and every laugh he earned felt like a trophy he was collecting. At one point, he raised his glass for a toast. To new beginnings, to hard work paying off, and to, well, not everyone can say they made it this far. His eyes flicked toward me as he smirked. The laughter that followed wasn't cruel. It was casual, careless. But that's what stung the most. To them, it was harmless humor. To me, it was years of dismissal wrapped in a single chuckle. I felt my heart pounding. I wanted to leave, to disappear before another remark found its way to me. But just as I turned toward the door, one of my brother's colleagues stopped me. "You're his sister, right?" he said warmly. "I've heard your name before. Aren't you working in tech? Something with startups?" Before I could respond, my brother cut in, chuckling. "Oh, she dabbles. Little projects here and there, but nothing serious, you know. Not like the corporate world." The colleague raised his eyebrows, clearly curious, but moved on politely. I stayed frozen in place. My brother's words rang in my ears. Little projects. What he didn't know was that those little projects had grown into something bigger than even I had imagined. Years of coding at night, endless coffee-fueled mornings, and the quiet, stubborn belief that I didn't need applause to validate me. All of it had built something real. My company wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. We had recently closed a major deal overseas, one that would change everything for me financially, and yet none of them knew. Because I had chosen silence. I had chosen peace over validation. But as I stood there, my brother laughing with his friends, I realized that my silence had been mistaken for weakness. My humility had been twisted into failure. I took a slow breath and walked back toward the center of the room. The chatter quieted slightly as I placed my glass on the table. "You know," I said calmly, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest, "success doesn't always look the same for everyone." My brother raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "Oh? Do tell." I looked around at the guests, at my parents who were watching with curiosity, and I felt the weight of years pressing down on me. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid to lift. That was the moment I decided. Tonight, the truth would no longer stay hidden. The room grew quieter as all eyes turned toward me. I could feel the weight of their stares, but instead of shrinking away like I had so many times before, I stood a little taller. For years, I began slowly, I let people think I was ordinary, that I hadn't accomplished much. I didn't correct anyone when they assumed I was struggling. I thought silence would protect my peace. A few murmurs spread through the room. My mother shifted uncomfortably, while my father leaned forward slightly, as if trying to figure out where this was going. My brother smirked, swirling the wine in his glass. "But here's the thing," I continued, my voice firm. "Silence doesn't erase success. It only hides it." I turned toward my brother's colleague, the one who had mentioned startups earlier. "Yes, I do work in tech. I founded a company 5 years ago. It started small, but we grew fast. This year, we closed an international deal that puts our valuation in the millions. The words hung in the air like a sudden clap of thunder. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Someone coughed nervously. My brother blinked, his smirk faltering. Wait, what? You're joking. I shook my head. No joke. While you were buying furniture for this apartment, I was negotiating contracts overseas. While you measured your success in square footage, I measured mine in global partnerships. A sharp silence cut through the room. My aunt's eyes widened, her hand covering her mouth in surprise. A few relatives exchanged glances, clearly shocked. My parents stared at me as if they were seeing me for the very first time. I let the silence stretch before continuing. I never needed to prove myself at family dinners. I never needed applause. But what I won't allow anymore is being mocked, dismissed, or reduced to a punchline. The burn in my chest finally eased as the words left my lips. For the first time, I felt free, like I had stepped out of the shadows I'd been hiding in my whole life. My brother set his glass down, his confident grin replaced by something I had never seen before, doubt. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" he asked, his voice smaller now. "Because I didn't need to," I replied simply. "But tonight, you made sure I had to." The room remained hushed, the weight of my revelation pressing into every corner. And then, slowly, my aunt began to clap. A few others joined in. It wasn't thunderous, not yet, but it was enough. I smiled faintly, not out of pride, but out of relief. Finally, the truth was no longer buried, and as my brother shifted uncomfortably under the attention he once craved, I realized something important. The tables had turned. For the first time, I wasn't the invisible one. I was the one everyone was looking at. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the clinking of ice in someone's glass. My words seemed to hang in the air, heavy and undeniable. I stood there, calm but resolute, watching as the truth rippled through the faces around me. My mother was the first to break the silence. Why didn't you ever tell us?" Her voice trembled, somewhere between surprise and guilt. I looked at her gently. "Because whenever I tried, it never seemed to matter. Every conversation turned back to him. Every achievement I shared was brushed aside. After a while, I stopped trying." Her lips parted as if to protest, but no words came out. My father sat rigid in his chair, his jaw tight. He had always taken pride in presenting a strong, successful family, but in this moment, it was clear he realized he had overlooked half of it. Me. The guests whispered among themselves, some stealing glances at me, others at my brother, who looked as though someone had pulled the rug out from under him. His face flushed red as he forced out a laugh, though it lacked his usual confidence. "Well," he said, his tone shaky, "I guess. I didn't realize you were doing so well. But still, real estate is different. Owning property, it's tangible." I met his gaze evenly. "Success comes in many forms. You wanted a house. I wanted freedom. We both achieved what we set out to, didn't we?" For once, he didn't have a clever retort. His eyes darted away, avoiding the stares of the very guests he had been entertaining moments earlier. A relative finally spoke up. "You should be proud," she said to me with genuine warmth. "Building something from the ground up is no small feat." Her words opened the floodgates. More guests chimed in, asking me questions about my company, my team, my journey. The focus of the evening shifted, the spotlight sliding away from my brother and landing squarely on me. I answered politely, not boasting, not rubbing it in, just sharing the truth I had kept hidden for so long. Each word felt like another weight lifting off my shoulders. My brother slumped into a chair, silent now, his earlier bravado gone. My parents remained quiet too, watching with a mix of pride and regret etched across their faces. Later, as the Night wound down and guests began leaving. My mother pulled me aside. Her eyes were glassy. "We should have listened more. We should have seen you." I gave her a small smile. "It's okay. I see myself now, and that's enough." My father cleared his throat, struggling to find the right words. "We are proud of you," he said stiffly. It wasn't much, but for him, it was everything. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, I felt lighter than I had in years. The city lights stretched before me, glittering with endless possibility. Behind me, my brother stood at the doorway, watching. He didn't say a word, and neither did I. But his silence carried a message. I was no longer someone he could mock, no longer the shadow he could overshadow. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defined by his success or my family's expectations. I was defined by my own choices, my own victories. And as I walked away from that housewarming party, I knew one thing for certain. I had finally stepped into my own light. The night air felt cool against my skin as I walked down the quiet street. The sound of laughter and chatter from the party fading behind me. My heels clicked softly on the pavement, each step carrying me further away from the suffocating weight of old expectations and closer to something that felt like freedom. I stopped at the corner, glancing back once. The building stood tall and gleaming, filled with lights and voices, but to me it already felt distant, like a world I no longer needed to belong to. For so many years I had craved acceptance at those tables. I had longed for validation, for even the smallest acknowledgement that my path had value. But tonight taught me something I should have known all along. I didn't need anyone's permission to be proud of myself. I hailed a cab and slid inside, letting the silence of the ride wrap around me. My phone buzzed with messages, some from relatives expressing their shock and congratulations, others simply apologizing for not knowing. I read them quietly, a faint smile tugging at my lips. Their recognition was nice, but it wasn't what made me feel whole. What mattered was that I had finally spoken my truth. When I arrived home, I poured myself a glass of water and stepped out onto my balcony. The city stretched out before me, glittering under the night sky. The hum of cars below blended with the soft breeze that tugged at my hair. I leaned on the railing and took a deep breath. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. No more hiding, no more shrinking into silence to keep others comfortable. I had claimed my voice, and it felt stronger than I ever imagined. I thought of my brother. His face when the laughter died, when the spotlight shifted, when the power he held so tightly slipped through his fingers. A part of me pitied him, not because I wanted revenge, but because I understood what it felt like to build your identity around other people's approval. The difference was, I had learned to let go of that, and I thought of my parents, their regretful eyes, their late words of pride. Maybe it wasn't everything I wanted, but it was a start. Families are complicated, and forgiveness doesn't come all at once. But I knew now that whether they ever fully understood me or not, I would be okay. The candle I had left on the balcony table flickered in the breeze. I raised my glass in a quiet toast to the years of hard work, to the nights spent doubting myself, to the courage it took to finally speak. "Here's to freedom," I whispered softly. The city didn't answer, but in its shimmering lights, I saw a reflection of my own journey, messy, chaotic, but undeniably alive. And as I stood there, smiling into the night, I knew one truth above all else. I was no longer the quiet sibling overshadowed at family dinners. I was no longer defined by comparisons or mockery. I was me, whole, strong, and finally unafraid to shine.